It's 1999, a series of mysterious apartment bombings rocked Russia, killing hundreds. The government blamed Chechen terrorists, but conspiracy theories suggest a different story. People are scared, they need a strong leader. Then all of a sudden the prime minister that no one ever heard of was everywhere, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, who vowed to eradicate the Chechen threat.
Следовать арестов везде, в аэропорту, значит, вы уж меня извините, в туалете поймаем, и в сортире их замучим, в конце концов. Все, вопрос закрыт окончательно.
But at that time Putin was nobody to the public. When he was appointed as prime minister he had only 2% popularity. He launched the Second Chechen War, a campaign that solidified his image as a strongman leader. But was it all a smokescreen to consolidate power? Before we dive into the story how Putin became president, we have to know how he came this far. Early childhood. Putin was born to a working-class family in Leningrad in 1952. His father is a decorated war veteran and factory worker. An only child, Putin grew up in a Soviet Union-style communal apartment with two other families, as was typical at the time. Growing up, Putin loved spy novels and TV shows. When he was still in school, he went to the KGB Security and Intelligence Agency and asked how he could join. The people at KGB headquarters told him to study law. So Putin did exactly that, at Leningrad State University, and later spent 17 years as a mid-level agent working in foreign intelligence. During this time he experienced a defining moment of his life. By 1991, Putin had officially resigned from the KGB's active reserve. He was back in Leningrad, now called St. Petersburg, and working for the city's first democratic mayor and his former law professor Anatoly Sobchak. Putin worked mostly behind the scenes and kept a low profile. He reportedly was the man to see if things needed to get done and Sobchak's indispensable man. It seems that Putin got his political technique from Sobchak.
Я живу в притоне, вот скажут все свидетели, вот как я живу.
Вы знаете, помочь можно тогда, когда для этого есть возможность.
На меня начихало, вот я многодетная.
Я вам искренне сочувствую.
Who was known to have strong authoritarian tendencies. Putin's loyalty to Sobchak was evident in two significant incidents.
Самым знаменитым человеком на сегодняшний день является мэр нашего города Анатолий Александрович Собчак.
First, when Sobchak failed to be re-elected as mayor, Putin declined a job offer from the victor, declaring, "It's better to be hanged for loyalty than be rewarded for betrayal." Second, there was a rare moment of vulnerability during Putin's 18 years in power when he openly wept at the funeral of Anatoly Sobchak, underscoring the deep bond between them. 1996, Putin and his family relocated to Moscow. There, he quickly climbed up the ladder and became the head of the FSB, the agency that succeeded the KGB. In 1998, Boris Yeltsin, then the president of Russia, named Putin to this position. Newsweek reported that it was a job the president would have given only to the most trusted of aides. But Putin's political journey had its share of challenges. Back in 1991, due to his loyalty to Anatoly Sobchak, Putin was appointed as the head of the Committee for External Relations of the St. Petersburg mayor's office on June 28. His responsibilities included promoting international relations and foreign investments for the city. However, less than a year later, Putin found himself under investigation by a commission of the City Legislative Council. Commission deputies Marina Salva and Yuri Gladkov concluded that Putin had understated prices and allowed the export of metals valued at $93 million in exchange for foreign food aid that never came.
Масло животного 2,2 тысяч тонн, молока сухого 2 тысячи тонн. Значит, это фактически перекрывает все наши потребности. Но это...
Despite the commission's recommendation that Putin be fired, he managed to retain his position as the head of the Committee for External Relations, holding on to this role until 1996. In August 1999, Yeltsin appointed Putin Prime Minister of Russia, the fifth in less than 2 years. In Russia, the Prime Minister is the second highest-ranking official and reports to the President. And then, seemingly out of nowhere, Yeltsin stepped down and named Putin the acting president on New Year's Eve, 1999. Yeltsin said he wanted Putin to lead Russia into the new millennium as the president. It was an unexpected turn of events, but many people believe that Yeltsin was doing it to protect himself. He had done a lot of corrupt stuff during his presidency. Now he was getting older and weaker. He knew he was going to have to step down eventually, and he wants to make sure that the next president wasn't go after him, so Putin would become president as long as he could win the next presidential election in March. Which is going to be kind of difficult because he is basically nobody to the public. No one knows who he was. This was a problem because he was going to run for president, but that is where the apartment bombing came in that we talked about earlier. Shortly after Putin became acting president, for apartment buildings in Moscow and other cities blown up with bombs at the middle of the night as people slept. Hundreds were killed. It was kind of like 9/11 event for Russians. Then sudden from nowhere, Putin came into public eyes when he take lead the military campaign against Chechen. This military campaign may or may not have been successful for Russia, but it was definitely a huge success for Putin. He quickly became the country's most popular politician. Suddenly he was seen as a savior of the nation, and he won the next presidential election. But later on, a fifth bomb was found in an apartment building in a town called Ryazan. It was defused and inspected for evidence. As it turns out, it wasn't placed by Chechenian terrorists, it was most likely placed by agents of SFB. The test proved that the bomb contained an explosive called hexagon that only the military had access to. The bomb's detonator was also from the military, but it did not matter. In March 2000, Vladimir Putin was officially named Russia's president, and now it was finally time for him to rule. Anyone who questioned him or the origins of the bombing was gonna face the consequences. After some time of apartment bombing, people were really suspicious about what went down and the government's role in it, but Putin wasn't going to talk about it. In fact, he was willing to take anyone who asked too much about the matter in one way or another. Mikhail Kaidasan was one of the people who tried to investigate the bombings. A week before he was supposed to release his finding, he was arrested. Trapaskin was sent to prison for 2 years. When he was released, he tried to speak out about apartment bombing again. He was arrested again and put in prison for another 2 years. Putin's iron fist didn't just go after investigators or journalists, it went after anyone who dared to question him. Putin's career had skyrocketed just 4 months before he went from being a pretty much anonymous bureaucrat to being prime minister, and in 3 years he had transformed himself from an unemployed deputy city mayor to the president of the entire federation. But now, the real work began. At this point, he needed to solidify his grip on power. The first thing Putin did was to pay his debts. He dropped all corruption charges against Yeltsin and his relatives. Next, an election was scheduled so the voter could decide whether to give him a full term as president. But Putin and his backers made sure the voters didn't really have a choice. First, Putin announced he wasn't going to campaign. At all. He wouldn't even debate his opponents. He still needed to fundraise. But the money would be used to buy the election, not political advertisements. Hundreds of millions of dollars were gathered in extremely shady ways. A secret audio recording captured the Ukrainian president telling a colleague that Putin had hit him up with cash and that he transferred $50 million to Putin from Ukrainian government accounts. Putin eventually paid back an amount of 5 times greater. That's $250 million. Using money from the Russian state company Gazprom. Because Putin was acting president, Putin's team was able to use this to influence the courts to systematically target and eliminate some of the most competitive opponents from the race. They found technicalities, like not registering an apartment with the Central Election Commission, even though that apartment was owned by a family member, not even the candidate himself. So well that at the start of the campaign, there were 53 declared candidates, but by election day the fields had been trimmed to just 11. The next step in making sure Putin won was putting heavy top-down pressure on the regional governors to get in line and support. If they refused, the Kremlin threatened to defund projects and services in their districts. On election day, virtually every trick in the book was used. To rig the result to guarantee a Putin victory, extra ballots were simply printed, filled out for hundreds of thousands of phantom voters, and cast for Putin. A technique called caterpillar ring went like this. A voter approaching the polling place was offered a bribe of 50 or 100 rubles, less than $5, by a Putin loyalist to take a pre-filled out ballot inside and drop it in the box. They would then take the blank ballot they were supposed to vote with back outside and trade it for the money the Putin. Then fill out the blank ballot as a vote for Putin and repeat the process over and over again. Putin finished with a staggering 53.4% of the vote, despite going up against 10 other opponents. And because he received more than half the vote, Putin won outright. More than 400 lawsuits were filed across the nation documenting all kinds of these abuses. But after Putin took office, the Central Elections Commission stifled efforts to investigate them by completely removing the election data from its website.